Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We have been considering the parinama, prakruti parinama, guna parinama. We considered the Nityatvam, Anityatvam concept. And we also considered towards the end of the last session the Pancha Bhutas in our embodiment. The Bhutendriya Parin of gunas implies that the Bhuta parinamas, elemental parinamas, Prithvi, Tej, Vayu, Akash parinamas are in the embodiment. And we saw how the 5 elements have manifestation in our embodiment, which was brought to notice by Vachaspati Mishra in his commentary, Tattvas. Then, towards the end, there was enunciation to what we are going to discuss today. The Naiyayikas, the logicians, and a particular class of Vedantis called vadins. They have difference of opinion with the Patan, jalas and mkhyas. The Patan, jalas and mkhyas postulate that Indriyas are Asmita parinama. Ahankara janita, ahankarika. Indriyas are ahankarika. That means they ensue from principle of ahankar. They ensue from principle of asmita, which we discussed in the avishesha parva, the tanmatra. Along with asmita becomes avishesha, and from asmita parinama or ahankara parinama, there are senses in human embodiment. So Sankhya's, Patanjala's, along with even Ramanuja, Vedanta, they have considered the Indriyas as ahankarika, while Naiyayikas and vadins have considered them Bautika. So, this is just to bring to your notice the difference of opinion that the philosophical systems have. Nyaya Bhashyakara, Vatsa yana, while commenting on Yasutra 1.1.12, explicitly mentions Bhautikani Indriyani. For a layperson, it can be explained as to why they consider Indriyani as Bhautika Parinama, Bhuta Parinama. So, very primary reason can be given, which is not given in philosophy as such, but for a neophyte. The senses have their objects called Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha are the qualities which come from 5 elements. The Parthiva Padartha have Gandha. The Vayaviya Padartha have Sparsha. The Akasha Padartha has Shabda. Tej Padartha has Roop. So, Prithvi, Tej, Vayu, Akash, when they take a manifest form in post Vishesha plane, which is called Panchikruta plane, Panchikarnam. So in Panchikarnam, the 5 objects are related to Prithvi, Up, Tej, Vayu, Akash. Prithvi, Gandha. Up, the gustatory object, Rasa. So, the Gandha Vishayas come from Prithvi, and then the Rasa Vishayas come from Up Tattva, Rupa Vishayas come from Agni, that is Tej, Sparsha Vishayas come from Vayu, and Shabda Vishayas come from Akasha. And we also know that in metaphysics, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Gandha, Tanmatra are respectively to Akash, Vayu, Tej, Up, Prithvi. The Vishayas also, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Gandha, Vishayas are parinamas of Akasha, Vayu, Tej, Up and Prithvi. So, since the senses also have these 5 objects, Shabda Vishaya, Sparsha Vishaya, Rupa Vishaya, Rasa Vishaya, Gandha Vishaya, that is perhaps the reason why the senses are said to be Bautika, that they ensue from Bautika, because from Bhutas ensue the 5 Vishayas, namely Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. So, Bhautikani Indriyani. Why? Because Ghanendriyam, Parthivam, Rasanendriyam, Jaliyam, etc. has been mentioned. Then, that's how the Naiyayikas quite explicitly, vehemently declare that Indriyas are from Panchamahabhutas. So, the description also comes in Tarkamrutam, which is another classical text on Nyaya Darshana. So it mentions Ghanendriyam, Parthivam, Rasanendriyam, Jaliyam. So each Sparshendriyam, Vayaviyam, Chakshurendriyam, Tejasiyam. So that's how they are related to 5 elements. And that is how they have put their argument, that Indriyas are Bhautika. Indriyas are from Panchamahabhutas. Indriyas are from element of Akash, Vayu, Tej, Up and Prithvi. Then the Mayavadins also in one of their texts called Vedanta Paribhasha, it also mentions similarly Panchabhutair Vyastyai Pruthak Pruthak Kramena Shrotra Tvak Chakshu Rasana Ghranakyani Panchajnanendriyani Jayante. So from Panchamahabhutas, these Indriyas come up. Indriyas are outcome of Panchamahabhutas. It's also express stand of Mayavadins Vedanti. And this is expressed in their Vedanta Paribhasha, which is again a valid text, authorized text, which tells about various terminologies of Vedanta, of Mayavad. So, the same text also mentions Etaireva Rajogunaipitaihi Panchabhutaihi Vyastyair Yathakramam Vakpanipada Payupasthani Karmendriyani Jayante. Even Karmendriyas, the 5 Karmendriyas, Vakpanipada Payopastha, Etaireva Rajogunaipete. So, by Rajoguna aspect of the Pancha Mahabhutas, Vakpanipada Payopastha Karmendriyas ensue. So by Sattva Guna, Jnanendriyas, Sattva Guna aspect in Panchamahabhutas give rise to Indriyas. Rajoguna component in Panchamahabhutas give rise to karmendriyas. So that is why they also explicitly mention that Pancha Karmendriya and Pancha Jnanendriyas, the 10 Indriyas, are mutations of Panchamahabhutas, namely Prithvi, Aptej, Vayu, Akash. So this is their very express and explicit position which they maintain in their texts. And with regards to mind, the Mayavadins consider it as anendriya. My mind is not considered to be Indriya. The 11th organ is considered to be anendriya. This is also a point to be taken note of, because we are familiar with the concept of 11 Indriyas, Ekadasha Indriyas. Often we have referred to as Indriyas as Ekadasha, 11 Indriyas. The mind is counted as Indriyas. But Advaitis, they find difficulty in postulating that the manas is coming out of Panchamahabhutas. And we can understand their inconveniency. It is not possible, or there is no possibility of presenting a rationale to say that mind, manasendriya, mind organ ensues from Panchamahabhutas. So what do they say? They say manas is anendriya. Mind is not Indriya, it is non-Indriya. Indriyas are only 10. Karmendriya, Jnanendriya, each one is a panchakam, each one is a 5, and therefore those 10 are Indriyas, while mind is anendriyam. And for this, they are trying to take substantiation to their stand from an Upanishad called Kathokopanishad. The Kathopanishad in 1.3.10 has the following to say: Indriyebhya parayartha arthabhyascha param manaha. So Indriyebhya parahi artha arthabhyascha param manaha means the Indriyas, the Indriyas and objects, and we know there are 10 objects for 10 Indriyas, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, and for Vak, the speech, the Pani, give and take, Pada, Chalana Valanam, movements, locomotion, Payu, Visarga, and Upastha, Ananda. So the 10 organs, Karmendriya, Jnanendriya, have 10 objects of their own. And so Kathopanishad says, Indriyebhya parahi artha. The arthas are greater than Indriyas. Then artha, the manas is greater than artha, objects. That means Indriya is considered separate than manas, according to Kathopanishad, because it counts 3 categories in Kathopanishad: Indriya, Artha, and Manas. And there is the gradation given that Arthas are greater than Indriyas and Manas is greater than Arthas. Objects are greater than Indriyas and Manas is greater than objects. So that means Indriyas and mind have been separately counted in Kataka Shruti. Therefore, they take this substantiation. There is also another quotation that appears in Taittiriya Upanishad. Etasmad jayate pranaha mano indriyani cha. Etasmad jayate. From that ensues prana, mana and indriyas. So again these are three categories: pran, manas, indriya. And therefore manas has a testification to say that it is different than indriya. And that is one of the reasons why the Advaitins have substantiated their position by taking some of these quotations from Upanishads to postulate that manas is different than indriya. Now, these Maya vadins are refuted by other Vedantins, Vaishnava Vedantis. Manashasthani Indriyani, Bhagavad Gita 15.7. So there is a mention in the Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter, 7th verse. So Bhagavad Gita clearly mentions that the mind is an organ, and as we have often quoted, it is the 11th organ. Mind has been considered as 11th organ. And the quotation that we took just now, which is 15.7, it is thus: Mamai vansho jivaloke jivabhuta sanatanaha manah shasthani indriyani prakrutistani karshati. So, this is again marvelous verse from Bhagavad Gita, where Bhagwan says, in this body there is a sanatana jivatma, there is ageless jivatma, which is my ansha, which is my part. It is my fragmentation. It is my ansha, part. And that works on the mind which is engaged in Prakrti, and it draws, the Jivatma is drawn with the senses and the mind towards Prakrti. The Prakrti has magnetism on these senses and the mind, whereby although it is a divine particle, it is drawn towards the Prakrti, it is engulfed by Prakrti. So, Shasthani Indriyani, Manas Shasthani Indriyani. So the mind has been equated with Indriyas, which is in the grip of Prakrti, which is in the grip of Sattvara-Jatama, which is in the grip of Bhoga Apavarga, which is in the grip of Mohamaya. And therefore, mind is to be properly considered as an internal organ and not a separate entity as apart from organs. So, Ramanujiyas have carried out this duty of repudiating the stand of Mayavadins and even Naiyayikas. So one can look into Vishishtadvaita Granthas. I recall from a very, very well-known text of Ramanuja Vedanta called Yatindra Matadipika. Yatindra Matadipika has a chapter called Prakruti Prakaranam, a chapter on Prakrti. And it clearly mentions, postulates, substantiates the position that from Satvik Ahankara, Ekadasha Indriyani, from Satvik Ahankara, Ekadasha Indriyas, Satvik Ahankarat, Ekadasha Indriyani, Rajasaha Sahakrutat, Ekadasha Indriyani Jayate. So, the sattva rajatama gunas are differently constituting for manas as an indriya, jnanendriyas as indriyas, and karmendriyas as indriyas. So, that is to say that the indriyas are ahankarika. Then there is also another mention in the same text, smrutyadikaranam indriyam manaha. So it mentions what is manas, smrutyadi, smruti etc. Karanam, organ of memory etc. is manas. So that is how the indriyas have been postulated as ahankarika, generation of ahankara tattvam and not generation of pancha mahabhutas. This is the stand of Patan jalas and this is the stand of even Ramanujiyas. So let's try to take a brief overview on the organs. The organs are senses and they have sensations. Then organs have ashraya and organs have vishaya. So let's try to understand this very interesting topic that comes in the philosophical texts. The visual organ is eye. The two eyes are visual organs and their support is vision. And their objects are colors and forms, colors and shapes. So that's how the eye or visual organ is to be understood. That eye is an organ, it is visual sensation organ, it gives sensation of visuals and its support is vision, and the vishaya is color and form, color and shape. The ears are auditory sense organs. They sense the auditory aspects. Their ashraya is audition and their vishaya is shabda, sound. Sound is their object. Then the nose. Nose has sensation of what is called as olfactory sensation. And then its ashraya is smelling. And vishaya is odor and smell. The tongue is a gustatory sense organ. Its ashraya is tasting and vishaya is taste. The skin, tvak, is a tactile sense organ. Its ashraya is touch and the vishaya is tangibleness. And the sixth organ, the mind, it is organ of mental sensation. Its ashraya is jnana and its vishaya is idea, kalpana, sankalpana. So these are the six organs including mind has been described in philosophical text. Coming to karmendriyas, the five karmendriyas, hasta, vaka, pad, guda, shishna. These are five karmendriyas. Hasta, prehensory organ. Vak, vocal organ. Pad, locomotive organ. The guda or anus, excretory organ. And shishna, the penis, generative organ. So, these are the descriptions which come in allied texts of philosophy, which tell us about the five cognitive organs and their objects, then five karmendriyas and their objects. Another point to be taken note of about the Indriyas as we are dealing with it is the stand that the Buddhas have taken. The atheistic philosophers, Buddhas, they have another point of view to mention, describe. They make a classification of the five Jnanendriyas. Now we think five Jnanendriyas are five Jnanendriyas, and we don't tend to go for any classification. But however, Buddhas have made an observation, and they divide the Jnanendriyas, cognitive organs, into two classes called Prapyakari, Aprapyakari. What is it that they are citing? See, look at these five organs, cognitive organs. The eyes don't have direct physical contact. They don't need, and they cannot be having. They don't need and they cannot be having a physical contact with their object. So, visual object can be at a distance, and it must be at a distance. If I touch the visual object right to your eyeballs, you will not be able to see it. So the object cannot physically touch the organ. Object must be at distance. Too close an object, you don't see it properly. Too far an object, you don't see it properly. It is within the range that you can sight the visual objects. If the object is too remote, then you will not sight it. If the object is very proximal to very eyeballs, you will not sight it. It is within a range that you are able to have proper sight and good sight of the object. So that is about eyes. About ears, it is similar case. But little difference. The sound object can touch your ear organ. And when the sound is very subtle, we almost take it to our ears and touch our ears. Now this is not possible to do with eyes. You can't touch the object straight away to eyeballs and say, have a close look at it. You will not even look at it. You can't look at it. But in case of ears, yes, you can take it right to your ears and you can hear the sound. And the sound object too far away from ears, you will not be able to hear. The sound which is made some kilometers at a distance may not reach your ears. It depends upon its decibels. So if it's high decibel sound, then your ears will catch even at a distance. Low decibel sound, you will not be able to hear. So ears also have a limitation that too far a sound doesn't reach your ears. Like too far a visual object doesn't reach your visual organ. Then coming to nose, nostril, olfactory organ, it is similarly that object of smell can be at a distance, and yet the smell will come. A flower might be at a distance, or a bouquet might be at a distance, yet you will get the fragrance of it. The smell object is such that it can be at a distance and yet you will smell it. Or it can come close to your nose and you can smell it. Now coming to tactile organs, Sparshendriya, something cannot be too far and too remote. Then you will not get the touch sensation. So the skin is such an organ which needs a touch, physical touch. The feather must touch your skin, then you will know it is tender. A rough object should touch your skin and then you will say it is rough. So it needs a physical contact. So the object must physically touch. Tactile object must physically touch your tactile organ and then you get the sensation of it. If it is at a distance, you don't sense the touch of it. So, then coming to the tongue. The tongue is a tactile, is a gustatory organ, and the object of taste must touch your tongue. The taste object cannot be kept at a distance and you stick out your tongue, you cannot be getting the taste of it. It must touch your tongue. So we realize that the senses and their five objects, there is some kind of difference which is cited by Buddhas, and therefore they classify something as prapyakari, aprapyakari. So they classify the drugendriya, shrotrendriya, manas are aprapyakari. They don't need the physical contact with the object. So counting the 6 organs, the organ of vision, organ of audition and mind, they don't need physical contact with the object. The objects can be at a distance and yet they will get the sensation that they need. So they are called aprapyakari. It is not necessary that the object should be prapta, prapya, for a physical contact. Without physical contact, they can be at a distance, they can be remote, yet they will have their sensation. So drugendriya, shrotrendriya and manasendriya are aprapyakari. They do not need a physical contact or sannikarsha. These senses can go to the objects, even if the objects are at a distance. But Ghanendriya and Jivha Indriya, they lead a sannikarsha. Although little difference here, Ghanendriya also, when the object is too far away, you will not get the smell sensation. But when you want to take a smell of some fragrance, like you want to take fragrance of rose or flower, you take it closer to your nose. You want to feel the fragrance. Otherwise, you may not feel the fragrance, and if you feel the fragrance, it is because of the wind which flows. The wind will carry the particles, olfactory particles, and then you will get the sensation. If there is still air, then rose cannot be at a distance, and yet you will be able to get it. So they need a carrier, and the wind is the carrier. If you are getting the smell perception at a distance, it is because of the wind flowing, because the carrier of the smell particles is air and wind. So yet it will reach your nose. It has to reach your nose and olfactory organ, and then only you get the fragrance. Similarly, tongue. A tongue needs similarly a physical contact. So in case of Ghanendriya, there is particles which are charged with smell or fragrance. The wind has to be a carrier, air has to be a carrier, and that air carries those particles to your nose, and that's why you get the smell sensation. So it needs a physical contact either with a mediator or without a mediator. In case of an orchard, where you get the fragrance of the flowers, although you are at a distance, it is because the air is a carrier available, and air carries the fragrance and touches your nasal parts, and therefore you get the fragrance smell. So also the tongue. So tongue also needs a physical contact, sannikarsha. So, so they say that they are prapyakari. So Buddhas think that they have scored over others by giving this perspective that the senses are prapyakari and aprapyakari because of the functional mode of the five senses. And they think that they have scored over because nobody has given this observation, but they are the first one to give this observation and this classification called prapyakari, aprapyakari, needing physical contact and not needing physical contact. Now, they have been examined by orthodox philosophers, primarily the Mimamsakas, and they ridicule them, saying that this is very childish to be postulating something like this. It is not specificity of the senses. So it is not classifying the senses right to as aprapyakari, aprapyakari. It is objects. It is classification of objects. Shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha are objects which have these distinctions, and it is nothing to do with the senses. The classification pertains to actually objects and not to senses, and therefore it is not right that you have classified senses as prapyakari and aprapyakari. Now this kind of examination comes in one of the texts, well-known texts of Mimamsa called Manameyodaya. And they have refuted this stand of Buddhas. So they say it is not Indriya Vaishishtya, it is Tanmatra Vaishishtya. It is Vishaya Vaishishtyam and not Indriya Vaishishtyam. It is not peculiarity of the senses, but it is peculiarity of the objects. And you are confusing between the objects and the senses. So your classification is classification of the objects. Shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha, vishayas have something special, and that special is what you are referring to, but you are sticking that to the organs, which is not right. And this is how they have refuted their view. So we have considered certain relevant things which came with regards to senses. Now, for Adhyatmic student or student in Adhyatma, we need to understand Adidaivic aspects. So now we are looking at a classification which will tell us about Adibhautik and Adidaivik aspects. And of course, the senses are Adhyatmic. So if you make a column, Adhyatma, Adidaiva, Adibhuta, you can put in the following information that comes. This comes in an Upanishad called Subalopanishad. So it makes observation of the 14 senses on the plane of Adibhautik, Adidaivik, Adhyatmic. So Indriyas are Adhyatmic. So you should make 2 columns on a piece of paper, 3 columns in a piece of paper. The 3 columns for Adhyatmika, Adidaivik, Adibhautika. So these will be 3 columns. And now you will know how the senses are considered by the wisdom of the lore and the Vedic wisdom and the Darshanic wisdom, which tells us about the constitution, because these are after all Indriyas, and I have often told you these are Indriyas, Indra, king of all gods, and his possession or possession of celestial deities. They are presiding deities over the senses. The senses are presided over by the deities, and therefore there is Adidaivik aspect, and then of course there is they have objects which are Adi Bhautika. So, I suggest you take a piece of paper and have 3 columns. The first column for Adhyatma, second column for Adi Bhuta, and a third column for Adi Daiva. Then you will crystallize the Adi Bhautik, Adi Daivik, Adhyatmic aspects behind the senses, which are 14: Jnanendriya, Karmendriya, and Antakaranendriya. So here we go. So in the Adi Bhautik, Adhyatmic column, which is on the left extreme, in the Adhyatmic column, you should put down all the 14 organs. What are the 14 organs? Shrotra, Tvak, Chakshu, Jivha, Grana, Vak, Pani, Pada, Shishna, Guda, Manas, Buddhi, Chittam, Ahankara. So these are 14. So this is the Adhyatma. In our embodiment, we have these things. What is that? 5 Jnanendriyas, Shrotra, Tvak, Chakshu, Jivha, Granam. 5 Karmendriyas, Vak, Pani, Pada, Payu, Pastha. And then Antakarana Chatushyam, Manas, Buddhi, Chittam, Ahankara. So on the left hand column, which is mentioning the Adhyatma of the senses, these will be listed. Now in the middle column, let's see what are the entries. So they will give an entry for each of the organ. For Shrotra, Vishaya is Shabda, that is Adibhuta. So Shrotra, Shabda, Tvak, Sparsha, Chakshu, Rupa, Jivha, Rasa, Grana, Gandha, Vak, Vachanam, Pani, Adanam, Pada, Gamanam, Shishna, Anandam, Guda, Visargam, Manas, Sankalpa, Buddhi, Nishchaya, Chitta, Chintanam, Ahankara, Abhimana. So, this is the column of Adibhautika. Now comes the third column of Adidaiva, which will mention the Devatas, which are presiding deities over these. So what are the entries for the Shrotram? Dik. For Tvak, Vayu Devata. Chakshu, Surya Devata. Jivha, Varuna Devata. Granam, Ashwini Kumar. Vak, Agni Devata. Pani, Indra Devata. Pada, Upendra Devata. Shishna, Prajapati Devata. Manas, Mrityu. The Guda, Mrityu. Manas, Chandra Devata. Buddhi, Brahma. Chitta, Narayana. Ahankara, Rudra. So this is the Adidaivik constitution. So the list is like this. The Adhyatmika of the 14 organs or Indriyas is Shrotra, Tvak, Chakshu, Jivva, Gran, Vak, Pani, Pada, Shishna, Guda, Manas, Buddhi, Chittam, Ahankara. Then there are Vishayas, which is Adibhautika. Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, Vachanam, Adanam, Gamanam, Ananda, Visarga, Sankalpa, Nishchaya, Chintana, Abhimana. And then Disha, Ade Devatas. Disha, Vayu, Surya, Varuna, Ashwini Kumar, Agni, Indra, Upendra, Prajapati, Mrityu, Chandra, Brahma, Narayana, Rudra. This is the description that comes in Subalopanishad. So the 4 internal organs have their function: Sankalpa, Manas, Nishchayam, Buddhi, Chintanam, Chitta, Abhimana, Ahankara. So Abhimana Devata is Rudra, Chintana Devata is Narayana, Nishchaya Devata is Brahma, Sankalpa Devata is Chandra. that is moon. So this is an interesting information that we get in Upanishads. So we were considering these Bhutendriya parinamas, which Patanjali has mentioned as prakruti parinamas. Now, to proceed for conclusion of this topic, the Prakrti Prakaranam, we are going to have further more information, knowledge, understanding, comprehension. But we will do that in our next session. But to close this session, finally, let me tell you one more factor which we discussed in the last session about Nityatvam, Anityatvam. So Atma Nityatvam is unique kind of Nityatvam. Otherwise, materialistic man thinks that if he has procured some real estate, he thinks now this is permanent estate of mine. Builds a house and he says, now I have permanent residence. This is my permanent residence. I don't know what is so wise about referring to something as permanent address and temporary address. Otherwise we fill up in the forms and which the bureaucracy asks for. They ask about our permanent address and temporary address. What is permanent address? Is it really permanent address? How and how long it is permanent? Permanent means how long? We see people changing houses in lifetime. In one lifetime, they will migrate from one house to other house. They will migrate from one country to another country, one city to another city. How can there be a permanent address? Tell me. What is referred to? What is implied in soliciting information about your permanent address? How far it is really permanent? We are not even permanent here. We have a lifespan. Now, if we are not permanent, what can be really permanent address for us? We ourselves are not permanent. We are in transition. So, in vyavahara, in practicality of life, we really play with words and quite irrationally we do that. There is no rationality in declaring, mentioning, holding that something is permanent for me. You yourself, you are not permanent. You have built your house. But a mystic saint says, when you have your own house, the first thing that your people do, that once you are dead, they keep your body out before it is taken to disposal. The first thing they want to do is keep your body out the door. So it is your own house. You have built it. It is in your name. But once you are dead, your kith and kin, the near ones and dear ones, will do first thing is to put your body out. So, what is our idea of something permanent? So we say, this is my permanent investment, this is my permanent address, this is my permanent property, etc., etc. What is permanent? When you yourself you are not permanent, how something of yours can be permanent? So, in philosophical perspective, we have to understand this Nityatvam. Atma Nityatvam, Atma Tattva is absolutely permanent. How permanent? The creation may not be there, yet Atma Tattva will be there. The creation might have not commenced, yet Atma Tattvam is there. The creation might have ended with pralaya, yet you will not cease to exist. Atma Tattva will be really there. Now we are given information by modern science that this creation is something like 13 or 14 billion years old. Or 13 or 14 billion light years precisely. But that means before that there was no creation. The creation is said to be 13, 14 billion light years old. But then Atma Tattva was there even when the creation was not there. Now we are all the habitants of the earth. So our Atma is said to be permanent, while the earth itself is not permanent. Earth was not there 4,500 million years ago. Earth came into existence 4,500 million years ago. But then Atma Tattva is older than that. It is Purana Tattva, it is Shashvata Tattva, it is Nitya Tattva. That is absolutely Nitya. The only Nitya is that. Atma. Atma Paramatma. So, it might be argued when the earth was not there, how can there be human beings? Yes, human beings may not be there, but beings were there. The being is really eternal, absolutely eternal. The Atma-Nityatvam is a fascinating concept to understand. Without earth, you were there. When the sun was not there, even the sun is now 4,500 million years old. That means before that there was no sun. But you were there before the sun. You are older than the sun. The sun is going to be no longer there after another 6,500 million years. But you will not cease to be there. You will be there. Atma Bhavena, you are really indestructible. Atma Bhavena, you are Atma Swarupena, you are really absolute, really permanent, really endless, really birthless, really timeless. Nothing is timeless otherwise in the universe, because universe itself is having phase, creation to dissolution. Something comes into existence, like we are told that about 13, 14, 15 billion light years ago, there was the Big Bang, and then there was unfoldment, and then at some point in time solar system came, at some point in time earth was formulated, and sometimes it was inhabitable. Later it became inhabitable, and therefore the life came up, and therefore we came here. But however, Atma Swarupena, we are really eternal, and nothing is really Nitya. The Prakrti is also Nitya Tattva, absolutely Nitya Tattva, whether it is deluge phase or creation phase. The Prakrti, that's called primordial matter, nominal, is also Nitya. The Sattva Rajatama Gunas are Nitya. They will either in Gunas Samyavastha or Vaishamyavastha. The Gunas won't be lost. They are absolutely eternal. So in philosophy, when the eternality is spoken of, we are told about relative permanence and absolute permanence. So this is brought to our notice that something is permanent relatively, something is impermanent. So permanence can be relative and absolute. This is what a student of philosophy has to understand. Anyway, before concluding the Prakrti topic, let us end this session and leave that conclusion for next session. Namaskar all of you.